Welcome to the second episode of A Natural Garden, a show we hope will help the average homeowner make decisions in their yard that benefit the natural world around us. Our method relies on the power of native plants and the reintroduction of forces that were historically common in the upper Midwest. As we continue to find our voice, we will break down our philosophy in more detail, but for now we'd like these weekly videos to reflect the current state of our gardens throughout the year, sharing tasks that can be completed now for the best success. Summer is officially here when the early sunflowers start blooming. This beautiful yellow ray flower will not stop blooming until fall, so it can be relied on to provide color for months. The plant can handle aggressive pruning, so it's very easy to create the perfect size for your garden. While the name fleabane doesn't exactly make the best first impression, this super common little flower is definitely a fun one to keep around. Get close to observe its tiny little pollinators. We shared a few penstemon species last week, and showy beard tongue is the last and most impressive we have to share from our gardens. Enjoy the blooms now, since they will not last long. In our gardens and in many of our projects throughout the Twin Cities, we can always rely on lanceleaf coreopsis to give us an early pop of color, especially in gardens during their first and second year. It really seems to be a favorite of small native bees. Yarrow is a well-known plant around the northern hemisphere and has value as a medicinal plant in many cultures. Its unique foliage and white flower clusters are in full bloom now. Yarrow does really well in sunny, dry conditions. Spiderwort is another native plant that has been cultivated into a few different varieties, but the native variety seems to do best in our gardens. You will likely only see it in full bloom early in the morning, since the flowers tend to close up by afternoon. Lastly, we have the mighty elderberry, one of our absolute favorites. Heavy pruning throughout the year gives us incredible mounds of white flowers that you can smell everywhere in the yard. Use elderberry along a garden edge to enjoy it to the max, and to keep an eye on the berries that will ripen later in the summer. While the common elderberry is beginning to bloom, the fruit of the earlier blooming red-berried elder is now mature. Now is the time to begin the summer pruning of your trees and shrubs. They are growing fast right now and will often grow larger than they are able to handle, like this silver maple we use for privacy along our alley. Prune back the new growth aggressively to lighten the load and to make sure it doesn't get worse damage later in the season, especially after a storm. For larger branches, I like to use a little saw like this. You can find them almost anywhere, and you do not need an expensive one to do the job. As you are pruning, remember that the work you are doing now and throughout the summer will discourage new growth. So I like to consider summer pruning the best time to shape and mold your trees and shrubs for the future. Have fun and experiment. We take the branches from our yard to a municipal compost where it will be recycled efficiently. It is still a great time to get out into your garden and cut back plants that don't fit or will eventually become too big for their space. We are emulating animal grazing, which has many benefits for our gardens, including cut stems for stem nesting insects. Certain species will be pulled, like this Canada goldenrod growing along the edge here. In areas that we want to keep shorter throughout the rest of the growing season, we are doing our last major cutbacks of spring. This may seem drastic, but done at the right time of year will encourage species diversity and blooming. As always, collect all of the cut material and compost. Once again, we are emulating animal grazing by doing this. Cutting up the stems and leaves will help speed up the composting process, but it's also not totally necessary. You should make your compost system work for you. When it comes to composting, there's a lot we could talk about, and we plan on making a more detailed video in the future. But for now, here are some bullet points. Our compost is located in a corner of our yard we like to call our utility area. Since this area is already where our air conditioner, water spigot, furnace exhaust, and electric meter exist, we designed our gardens to maximize the use of this space. We have a 2-bay compost, one for the finished product and one for the compost in progress. All of our compost will eventually end up in our vegetable beds, and with all of the spring cutbacks, it doesn't take long to get some great stuff. The key to composting is to turn it periodically, and our open bays make this very easy for us. We use a thermostat to monitor progress, But if you just turn every couple of weeks, you'll have good compost in no time. Make sure to break up compacted material as you turn your compost, and try to mix up the green and brown material in a ratio that will encourage rapid breakdown. If your compost dries out, add plenty of water to keep the composting process going. Your compost should be moist to the touch, but not soggy. Now is a great time to use your compost as mulch in your vegetable gardens. All of the mulch that we apply to our vegetable gardens at this time of year comes almost entirely from the work we have done in our natural gardens so far, just over the last month and a half or so. We have a lot to look forward to in our natural gardens, and while the spring blooms fade away, we have the entirety of summer ahead of us. New discoveries can be made every day, and we will do our best to highlight them over the coming weeks. We've had some really hot days over the last week, but make sure you find the time to get outside and appreciate the nature in your yard.